Good afternoon to everyone. It's my honor to open this international session. And thanks, first of all, to Mantas and his colleagues to invite me. I think it is highly relevant and highly important to have such kind of discussions and to share knowledge between Baltic states and even more broadly between Central Eastern European countries, which have common political past. My presentation will be also somewhat broader what we had before the lunch. This is partly because of my professional profile, and even more so because public service is embedded in society. So to understand why this or another country has such type of civil service and public administration, we need to understand what kind of society it is, what kind of value orientations, what kind of problems, institutional design, currents are typical for this particular society. And therefore, Mantas asked us, all of us, I guess, to provide an overview of a quarter of century of development. I ignored his request, so I speak about the state of affairs and changes in Estonian public governance after the millennium. And I start with a very, I hope you can hear me now. I start with very basic features, which seem maybe even a little bit too basic and too well-known things, but still I think this is important for the beginning. Estonia had made far less changes in public administration compared to Lithuania, as I realized sitting here during the first session. So all main structures and principles were basically laid down in early 90s and haven't changed until now. So we have two-tier governance system. We have central government and local government. We do not have regional or county governments. And there are many explanations why we don't have county governments. One of versions, which is quite mainstream one, says that county governors were loyal to Soviet regime, and this has been a way to get rid of them, to demolish the middle level of administration altogether, to get rid of so-called red kings. Nobody knows whether this is really true or not, but it could be at least partly true. Now county governments are very marginal in Estonian public administration, with very few staff, very few obligations, and almost non-autonomy. So this is just regional division of central government, and the county governor is appointed by the central government. So no truly regional government in Estonia. I will speak later on about local government reform more in detail, but here again, Estonia hasn't succeeded to make a local government reform. Until now, it has been pending for decades, which is non-typical for Estonia, which is internationally known as a radical reformer of the state and governmental system. So until now, you can see we have more than 200 local governments, and if you relate this to the size of Estonia and to the population of Estonia, which is 1.3 million, you can realize that local governments in Estonia are very, very tiny. Of course, excluding capital city Tallinn, which is also a local government, and which has more than 1/3 of the entire population. So the system of local government is heavily disbalanced, and this is one of the major problems of the entire public administration in Estonia currently. Every model government needs some sort of centralization. That's pretty clear, I guess. And you can centralize the government vertically and horizontally. And we have moved in two different directions in these terms. Vertically, Estonia has moved toward stricter centralization. So if you take, for example, tax administration, tax board, then you can see that regional or local bodies of tax board do not have any organizational autonomy. If, for example, a tax board agency located, let's say, in Tartu, wants to buy new computers, he has to ask from Talino. No, nothing, but they can decide by themselves. And this has been the tendency in the last 5 years or so, I would say. If we look at the horizontal dimensions, then we see that the Estonian government is increasingly decentralized. This means that besides of ministries, which we have 11, we have a lot of governmental agencies. They can have different legal name or legal format, but basically they belong to the one area of ministry. And roughly counting, we have double number of agencies compared to the ministries. And this is also quite a significant problem because it increases fragmentation and also changes power relations. So in terms of employees, currently already a fifth of central government employees works in foundations, not in ministries. So ministries are like hollowed out during the recent changes. And the third aspect, which is important to understand Estonia's situation and all the policy steps which have been taken, is neoliberal approach. I think Estonia is the most neoliberal country among the Baltic states, among the Baltic Sea region, and probably also amongst Central Eastern European countries. We have very stable government in terms of ideological background, so neoliberalism has been driving Estonian politics and policy basically since 1992, when Mart Laar came to as prime minister and was a very big advocate of Margaret Thatcher. So NPM is something still very popular among Estonian policymakers. So due to neoliberal approach, civil service in Estonia is based on position system. We never had during this period of independence career system. And because of neoliberalism, you can guess that this means also so-called lean and mean civil service. Low paid, poorly educated, with few number of civil servants, all these things what we know from United States of America. So let's see whether Estonian civil service is really lean and mean. And I show here you two figures. One is about employment, and the second is about salary level, because these two are major characteristics, basically, if we speak about employment and career opportunities. Here is the graph starting from 2006, and 2008 is taken as a baseline. Why? Because 2008 was the economic boom year, so everything was flourishing. People's income, labor market, and also public sector. So this was the brilliant year, 1000. And then Estonia experienced one of the sharpest economic shocks within EU, basically compared to the same as in Greece. And this red line, you can see what happened with the average level of employment. It fell from 100 in 2008 within 2 years by 13 percentages. Only 87% of total employment has been left. So very many people got unemployed. The blue line shows public sector, governmental employees. So we see much more modest decline. Despite of economic hardship, people in public sector, including civil servants, kept their jobs. And there is a slight green line. This is not that important. The green line shows public sector employment without changes between department or level of governance and so on. So this is one of the major topics of discussion currently in Estonia, whether employment in governmental sector should go hand in hand with the general tendencies at the labor market. And here is the graph about salaries. Being short, I have to say that salaries in public service in Estonia outperform national averages. This is an appealing place to work, including for young people, and universities or academia lose best graduates to the civil service because salaries in for academic staff cannot compete with those for public service. And also we see the grey line is again what happened with the average salary, Estonian average salary, due to the economic crisis and how civil service survived this economic hardship with quite modest decline, and now we went up again. So average salary in public sector is 1,000 euro, which includes also people like teachers, people in local government, which receive lower salary, whereas those employed by central government, and this is substantially higher than the national average of Estonia. So basically, we cannot find or say that Estonian civil service is mean and lean, and the same holds basically to the entire public sector. But now, going to the substance, so to say. What kind of changes we have experienced during last 10 years or so? I picked up 3 legal documents which frame the work of civil service and also frame amendment of laws and also making entirely new laws. By far the most important is Civil Service Act, and you can see also how long it took to amend it from 1996 until 2013, one of the longest in terms of pending legal acts in contemporary Estonia. A lot of discussion within, of course, civil service itself. Public interest was quite low toward this. And what have been the main changes with this new law? Basically, the changes were guided by the neoliberal assumption that we should decrease the number of civil servants. We need to decrease the number of the size of the public sector. So, according to the current Civil Service Act, fewer positions are qualified as civil servants. For example, people like IT personnel, communication, public relations, people, bookkeeping, professions like these are not anymore civil servants, even if these people work in the ministries or in local government. So basically this is just a trick. You name people differently. You say they are just employees, not civil servants. They are legally differently protected because for one is Civil Service Act relevant, for others this is the General Labour Law relevant. And of course you can show to the public, yes, we are cutting public sector because we have lower number of civil servants. But basically the number of people who serve the country remains the same. Of course, there is also attempt to get bigger transparency. So, according to the law, all positions must be fulfilled by open calls. And there are additional postulations to decrease expenditures for the civil servants. For example, one of the major problems in Estonia has been non-transparency of the pay system. Because if you looked at the official numbers, statistical numbers, then you saw that the salary level is very modest. But everyone knew that in reality, people working in civil service got much higher income. And the problem was different extra pays and in addition to the basic salary. So this system has been also changed with this new law, aiming to get more transparency to the systems. And also many other benefits, maybe a little bit in Bismarckian style, have been abolished. Extra holidays are not valid anymore for public civil servants. Top-up of salary for academic degree, for master degree or PhD degree, for knowing foreign languages are not valid anymore. Of course, for us who teach future public servants, this doesn't make happy because the motivation or pragmatic motivation to get the MA degree in public administration is lower now. So this is the internal circle, the classical government, I would say. Besides of that, because we are speaking in modern times about governance, we invite citizens to participate in governing the country. Estonia has made attempts to this direction also, being somewhat worried about the democratic deficit. And one entirely new act and one amended act are relevant here. In 2014, Estonia implemented the so-called Public Petition Act, which allows citizens to initiate basically a law. You can collect, not you can, but you have to, you must collect at least 1,000 signatures. You can do it online, and then you have also argument why some law needs to be changed, amended, or a new law introduced altogether, and you pass it to the parliament. And if everything is technically all right, then parliament needs to proceed this law. So theoretically, legally, it's possible that citizens make a new law or amend some existing one. But currently, this has been practiced in very few cases. About 6-7 cases are in parliamentary proceedings currently. Probably, very likely, they will be implemented also, but as you can see, the number itself is quite few one. And the third act, what I would like to stress here, is Political Parties Act. Why this is important? In Estonia, the landscape of political parties has some sort of frozen. We have 4 parties, we have the same parties in government, the same parties in opposition. And it has been criticized that the criteria to establish a new political party and to run for election are too high, and it is impossible to start a new party. So 2 major qualification criteria have been released. Now you need to collect only 500 people to start a new party, and also the election bail or the deposit, what you need to pay for setting up some candidates at election, is also lowered. And these amendments have given already a result. We had last elections in 2015, and 2 entirely new parties are now in the parliament. So these legal changes basically show that it is possible to address the democratic deficit. So what are the main challenges of Estonian today's governance? Again, I picked up 3. And the basic headline says that we need to cope with wicked issues. Wicked issues are very complex problems which typically run across departmental or ministerial lines. So many social problems you cannot solve by Ministry of Social Affairs only. I think the refugee problem is in these terms very brilliant example. You cannot solve this only by means of Ministry of Social Affairs. And one of the major remedies to tackle these wicked issues is to reduce fragmentation and separation of line ministries. This has been criticized for Estonia already many years. You see the OECD governance report is almost 5 years old. And we have a lot of policy papers, reports, strategies, action plans to compete with the fragmentation, but results are still almost close to the zero. So this is one of the most difficult problems. And the second one, which also increases the fragmentations, is weak prime minister office. Line ministries are very strong. So the cabinet as such, maybe to say it doesn't exist is voiced too strongly, but that's the real situation. Policies are made within line ministries, and Prime Minister office is just like reacting to their demands. So this is one of the major issues. The second one is clearly a result of the new public management, and this is in academic literature known as agencyfication. And this was what I referred in introductory slide. We have a lot of agencies. I guess in the area of education, we have like 5 or 6 agencies dealing with particular kind of education or particular problems in education. And because agencies are getting more and more strong in terms of financial resources, EU structural fund money go typically to the agencies, not to the ministry. The staff in agencies is increasing, so they are becoming stronger, and this, unfortunately, causes also quite many corruption cases. So according to the statistical report, the largest number of corruption cases are exactly related to the agencies and state foundations. And also ministries are losing in this era of agencyfication the policy planning authority. Many of the forecast studies are requested by independent bodies, think tanks, or by the agencies. And very often you see that ministry as the core and the agencies are not going in the same direction. So besides of the fragmentation between ministries, we see also some controversies within one area of policy. And the third thing is local government or administration reform. As I said, it is already pending for decades, and the key question is how to make local governments sustainable. Because they are very varying in capacities, starting from 1,000, we have a lot of municipalities with population below 1,000, most of pensioners, and on the other hand, we have capital city Tallinn, almost 500,000. And also, Estonian local governments are highly dependent on governmental resources, which decreases their autonomy in the sense of local government's charter. So the core solution to be seen is merger of municipalities. Until now, it has been voluntary, and quite few have done so. But by next local elections, 2017, this must be done. So 1 year or so, they can merge voluntarily, and then they are forced to merge. And the main issues which have been discussed during the local governance reform is, of course, which services local government must provide, whether services can differ across the local government because the size and resources are very different, and of course the problem of remote areas, how to keep people there, how to create jobs there, and how to sustain those localities. So coming to the end, how we should and could put the puzzle together. Two things basically are needed, and as you can guess, both those are lacking or arguably lacking in Estonia today. It is often said that Estonian government has only one document, which is Excel worksheet. They do not have any strategic vision. And current Prime Minister said in the eve of election that Estonia should become a new Nordic country. But this very nice slogan, New Nordic, was never filled with any substance, even not with rhetorical substance. So it's forgotten by today completely. Some academic people, basically with some technological background, are talking about developmental state, and if maybe some of you know that developmental states are South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, and so-called Asian tigers. So they are saying that we don't need Estonian nationalism, we need techno-nationalism, which is proud about e-Estonia and doesn't necessarily speak Estonian language and doesn't necessarily go to our famous song festivals. But this slogan has either developed further, so basically Estonia doesn't have any strategic vision. And moreover, we also haven't agreed upon strategic approach how to move forward, what to do with our governmental sector. And here also we have two competing strategies or two competing approaches. People in academic community, many of my colleagues, are advocating for new governance, which means multi-level networks, joined-up governance, interactive governance, and things like that, and which doesn't mean that we should shorten or somehow cut down the public sector. We just need to reorganize it. But the second competing approach is quite opposite in terms of size of the public sector and civil service, and they are advocating for cuts and further optimization. Less bureaucracy, smaller public service, on only unavoidable services which cannot provide civil society or private sector, and a lot of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing in its radical forms means basically that laws are made by citizens. So we don't need a lot of lawyers sitting in the Ministry of Justice and making new laws. These are citizens collecting 1,000 signatures, sending it to the parliament, and parliament votes, and that's it. Very efficient country. What will be the future of Estonia? As rhetorically to say, we shall see. But we have currently many big questions still open. And if you want to have more information about current state of affairs, then please go to the Bertelsmann Foundation website, and you can see sustainable governance indicators. There are already 3 years trend there. So you can see where Estonia is heading. So my time is over. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Professor. So just looking again at the time.